Talk About It Tuesday, and we have a great real estate question, also an asset protection, and an estate planning question all wrapped up into one. Listen to this. Can you talk about trusts? Would you recommend putting multiple properties in one revocable trust, or should there be a separate one for each? All right, let's talk about trusts. A lot of it going around the buzz as a buzzword. I hear it every few years in real estate. Somebody comes up with something, usually as a marketing scheme. The big thing, a few years ago was LLC, LLC. Now we're talking about trusts. But let's talk about what a trust is, because most people really don't understand what a trust is. Let's get technical first, and then I'll make it simple. So technically, it is a fiduciary relationship in which a trustor, or a grantor gives control of a title to a property or an asset to a trustee for the benefit of a beneficiary. Now, again, I made it technical, but now let's make this really simple. So, what is this trust thing? I or anyone can take any property that they have, and if they want someone to benefit from its use, meaning from its profits, so it could be cash, it could be real estate, it can be stocks, it can be, all kinds of things, and we want someone to gain the benefits of it. That's the beneficiary. We have to take the control away from ourselves and give that control to someone we trust, called a trustee, to carry out the wishes that I put in the trust. So the trust can have conditions. It can say the beneficiary will only get it when they're 21 years old and enrolled in school. It could be whatever conditions you put on it, right? It could be upon my death. It could be upon whatever, right? And the trustee has the responsibility, the obligation to carry out the wishes of the trustor for, again, the benefit of the beneficiary. So it's like having this bowl where you can dump assets in. And here's the other thing. It's like putting a lid on it because it's shielded from the public's eyes. So what are the benefits really of a trust? It's a good estate planning tool because it eases the transition from the beneficiary upon their death to it eases the transition from the grantor or the trustor upon death to the beneficiary. Meaning, instead of it being just in a will, which can be contested, right? Even if it's in a will, someone can contest it, and then it would have to go to court and go through probate, and then a court would decide whether or not to grant, the wishes of the person who wrote the will to, again, the beneficiary. If it's in a trust, it avoids that. Upon death, it immediately goes to the beneficiary. So the ease of transition of properties from one place or assets from one place to another is a good use of a trust. The speed at which it happens, because things can be in probate for years if they're contested, the speed at which it happens, the immediacy of the transition is a great use of a trust. The secrecy, because real estate transactions outside of a trust are all, public information. Anything that happens inside of a trust is hidden in the trust. That's that lid we put on that bowl. So speed, ease, and secrecy are great benefits of having a trust. So the question is, should you have a trust for multiple properties? Well, the question is, what are you trying to use it for? Because there are some cons to a trust also. And let's just make a distinction between irrevocable trust and revocable trust, right? Because the question was about, should you put it in, irrevocable trust? So irrevocable means once the grantor creates the trust and has whatever stipulations are in it, so irrevocable means it cannot be revoked or changed or amended, right? You can't rescind it. You can't amend it. That's it. You totally give up control. in an irrevocable trust. That's it. And a revocable trust is somewhat different, which means that you can amend it, revoke it, rescind it, whatever you want to do at any time, except upon death, and then it becomes irrevocable. So that's the difference between irrevocable and revocable trust. In most cases, you will not create an irrevocable trust because stuff happens, relationships change, circumstances change, and that's it. There's no changing that, once that happens. So in terms of real estate, there are some cons to it. You are still responsible as the grantor for a lot of the taxes. Some people think you get tax benefits. You don't. You get estate tax benefits in most states when you transition and the property goes to the beneficiary. But while you are alive, the grantor, in most cases, you still pay the taxes on it, except for any deductions or benefits that the beneficiary receives, and they will have to pay the taxes on that. Right? The trust in general now controls it. It cannot own it. Some people make that mistake. It doesn't own it, but the trustee controls the asset. So again, you give up control. You don't really get any tax benefit. If you want to refinance, it's a major problem. Most banks will not refinance a property that's in a trust, which means you would have to pull it out of the trust, which means it has to be revocable. You have to pull it out of the trust, refinance it, and then put it back in. Also, the benefits go, again, to the beneficiary and not to you. And it used to be a situation where you could be the trustor and the beneficiary, but I think as of 2018, at least 36 states, you can no longer be the beneficiary and the trustor, meaning you can't create a trust and be the beneficiary of the things in the trust. And the IRS sees that as an abuse of the tax trust law, so you probably have a problem on the federal level as well. So the question is, if you decide to do a trust, should you put all properties in a single trust or create multiple trusts? Well, that's kind of up to you, because you can have multiple beneficiaries who only have access to certain things in the trust. So if you had 10 properties and you had 20 beneficiaries, and you say, well, beneficiary A has 50% of this asset, then that's all they get, and they don't have access or knowledge of the other things in the trust. So there's no real danger in putting all the properties in a single trust if you're using it as an estate planning tool. And multiple trusts will be expensive, right? Because it costs money not only to set up the trust, but in many cases you have to pay the trustee for each trust. So no harm in putting them all in one trust if that's what your intention is, because again, you can have multiple beneficiaries, and those beneficiaries don't have to have knowledge of what the other beneficiaries are getting or the other assets in the trust that are not for their benefit. So can you put them in there? I think that's kind of a personal choice. I don't see a real benefit of making multiple trusts when you can have one trust for the multiple properties. So hopefully that clears up the issue of trust. It's different from a will. Again, you should still have a will. Everybody should have a will. Everybody doesn't necessarily need a trust. But if you have a trust, again, make sure you have a good trustee who carries out your wishes. In most cases, you should make it revocable in case, things change. And that's pretty much it on trust. So I can't really tell you personally whether or not you should have multiple trusts, but there is an expense to each and no real benefit to splitting up the trust. So love the question. Like, subscribe, share, keep the questions coming, and I'll see you next Tuesday.